Okay, before I begin, I just want to say that when I found out about this news that broke yesterday evening, I was shocked. Especially since it happened less than a week after two men had been exonerated for assassinating her father. And the person that I'm mentioning is Malcolm X, known as the national spokesman for the Nation of Islam. And his daughter that passed away yesterday, that they found her yesterday, Malikah Shabazz. She was 46 years old. She was 56 years old. And I'm sorry if I'm kind of stumbling, but I'm just shocked about the whole thing. But I'm also saddened because Malikah was a twin to her sister Malaak. And they shared a rarity in that they were the two daughters that were in the womb of Betty Shabazz when Malcolm X was assassinated in 1965. They never met their father physically. I want to make that clear. They never got to see their father physically, and they never got to experience being held by him, speaking to him, seeing him. So while the whole world, who were born in, let's say, the 20s, 10s, teens, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and early 60s, got to see her father while he was alive, she never got that experience. And she was robbed of that. And her whole life was marred with, I hate the word, but I gotta use it, tragic circumstances. Due to the fact of not just the fact that he was assassinated by black people, but it has been alleged that it was done at the hands of the Nation of Islam mosques in New Jersey, and it was ordered by a person that is still alive that many of you all praise, and that it was done in exchange for the Nation of Islam to not be under the harassment of the FBI. I said it. Sorry. But that has always been the talk of the streets of inner city America, particularly in Harlem, because Malcolm X spoke a lot of Harlem. My family's from Harlem. My mother actually got to meet Malcolm X twice in her life. The very first time she met him when she was a really young person. She was about to be 20, I think it was like 20 years old. And then the second time she met him, the first time she met him, she was about to be 20 years old, and she was holding Attila. She met him in an elevator, and he was holding her in her arms, and he needed help basically gathering his stuff because he had a briefcase and he had Attila in his arms, and she offered to hold her while he was in the elevator. So he held her, and she was a really sweet little baby, and she smiled. And then they got off the elevator because she was going the same route that they were going. And then they spoke for a while, and he said, "Thank you, little sister." And that was how the first time she met him. The second time she met him was at a rally. This was around about 1962, 63, just before he left the Nation of Islam. So she met him twice while in her lifetime, and in his lifetime, she interacted with him. But just think that my mother got to meet Malcolm X and talk to him, and this woman never got to talk to her father. Think of the trauma that entails. Think of how you have to hear people saying, "I've known your father my whole year. I know your father. And how it sounds really redundant because you don't want to keep hearing that because you never got to know him physically. Yeah, you know him because of the family history. You've seen his speeches, you read about him. But you can never say, I had a conversation with my father. Because there were people that assassinated him out of orders for other people because they were angry and jealous of him. Because he couldn't be controlled. Which is what happened. And then also, too, as a favor, and it's interesting because after that happened, they never, ever, ever bothered the Nation of Islam again. I'm just going to say that, allegedly. But I'm going to put that out there. So I'm going to report what CNN has to say. God, I can't stand them. A daughter, it says, Malikah Shabazz, the daughter of Malcolm X, has died, official says. A daughter of slain black civil rights activist Malcolm X, Malikah Shabazz, passed away Monday, the NYPD told CNN. Shabazz, 56, was found unconscious by her daughter at her home in Brooklyn, New York, according to the NYPD. Police said that it appeared to be due to natural causes at this time. It says Bernice King, a daughter of the late Martin Luther King Jr., offered her condolences. I'm deeply saddened by the passing of Malikah Shabazz. My heart goes out to her family, the descendants of Dr. Betty Shabazz and Malcolm X. Dr. Shabazz was pregnant with Malikah and her twin sister Malaak when brother Malcolm was assassinated. Be at peace, Malikah. Shabazz is the youngest of Malcolm X's 6 daughters. CNN has reached out to the medical examiner's office and to the Shabazz family. Malcolm X was one of the most powerful voices in the fight against racism before his shooting death in New York in 1965. He remains a symbol of inspiration for black men and others moved by his transformation from a street hustler to a historic figure the late African-American actor Ossie Davis utilized as our own black shining prince. The assassination came after the public feud between Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam's founder, Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm X had accused Muhammad of infidelity and theft and left the nation in March of 1964. Last Thursday, 2 men convicted of the assassination were exonerated during a court hearing. New York County Supreme Court Administrative Judge Ellen Biden granted the motion to vacate the convictions of Muhammad A. Aziz and the late Khalil Islam. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was a shock to her and it could have did something to her physically and caused for her to pass away unexpectedly. Now, she had a troubled life. She tried to live a life that was peaceful, never wanted to be in the private eye. She has a daughter. And I want to say something. The Fox News is dirty. You know that CNN just talked about her. The Daily News spoke about her. Even Yahoo spoke about her. But Fox News had to talk about her arrest back in 2011 and 2017. And then they had the nerve to even sneak in and talk about her late nephew and what happened to her mother. You dirty SOBs. That's why I didn't want to read it from Fox News. And another thing also that I want to say is that we cannot, as human beings, expect the daughters and sons of civil rights leaders to be just like their parents. Many people in Harlem that I know, because Harlem is like the mecca for activism. Not now, but it was a couple, like last decade or so. Now it's not. I would meet people that would say, I knew Brother Malcolm when he was in the Nation of Islam, but his daughters do not live right because they chose to leave the nation. I'm upset because their daughters are not activists. Which is not true, because Ilyasa and Atala and Malaak are activists. Gamila, who I met, because she shops at my job. Gamila is very nice, but Gamila has she gets nervous a lot. I wanted to tell her that I really admired her father, but I didn't know if she was going to snap at me. So it was best I didn't say anything, because the shaking was really sad to see. But how dare people assume that Malikah wasn't living her life right because she wasn't an activist? And and it's unfair how people judged her and measured her by her father and her mother. It was unfair. A lot of people don't know this, but when you are the child of people who are advocating for the human rights of a particular group, a lot of times you don't get jobs. A lot of times you are blacklisted. Many people don't know that. And a lot of times you have to make your own way. You have to work for yourself. You have to hustle on your own. Malikah was not allowed to live her life quietly. There were choices that she made that weren't the best, but she wasn't a hardened criminal. I do believe that the last arrest was blown out of proportion, in a sense, but Malikah was always humble. Malikah never came off aggressive. She never came off like she wanted to attack the world, at least in public. And this is a woman who came from a family that even after what happened to her father, more tragedies was happening. First, the daughter, her sister, wanted to, even though they said she didn't, was sending out a manifesto to assassinate Farrakhan. Then they made peace. Then 2 years later, her mom was burned alive. And I don't believe that the nephew did it. I'm just going to come out and say it. Then you have, finally, they had to sit down with Farrakhan. It didn't go as well. Then other things happened. And then the nephew was assassinated in Mexico. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to take. And then you have all these other people that are not allies to your family. And then they want to make money, and they want to make documentaries. They want to make movies. And I'm not speaking about the Malcolm X movie. I'm talking about Lifetime films. I'm speaking of just things that are just poorly put together. And we don't know anything about the daughters, with the exception of Ilyasa, after 1965. We don't really know anything about them, like as a full, like a history of them post their father's assassination. We know much more of Martin King because he's more mainstream in America, whereas Malcolm X isn't. But Malcolm X is known more so internationally, all over the world. He's a human rights activist, according to his daughter, who is the twin of Malikah, Malaak. But I do think that it's time that the world gets to know like the historics of the daughters post the assassination. And hopefully they, it's unfortunate Malikah has passed away, but the remainder of them, the 5 of them, which is Atala, Quibula, Ilyasa, Gamila, and Malaak, hopefully they get together and write a autobiography of themselves, or do a documentary, or a podcast even, or share their stories on YouTube about their experiences growing up being the daughter of an iconic human rights figure who fought for the, I don't want to say emancipation, but fought for the extinction of black suffering in the Americas and in the world. Because that's what Malcolm X did. He went to the UN before he was assassinated to speak on reparations and for the UN to acknowledge the atrocities of chattel slavery that happened to blacks in the United States. That is iconic. And they are iconic. And she was a daughter of an icon. And I pray that her soul is at peace. And I pray that Malikah Shabazz has been reunited with her mother. And that she has finally seen her father and has finally met him. And with that being said, this is Miss Analytical. I'm signing off. I hate to, report the story. It's sad, but the afterlife does exist. And people live on. Energy never dies. Just remember that. And to you all, have a wonderful day and talk to your family and just be close with your family. That's all. Because every one of us lives on borrowed time. I hate to say it like that, but and take care. Have a great rest of your day.